Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for IPDay's webinar Wednesday. Today, do you see what I mean? Visual literacy in a digital world. Bonnie Gooden, our national consultant with IPDay, is going to take us through some great strategies, and she's got a lot to share with us. So I'm going to turn over the broadcast to you, Bonnie.
Okay, thanks, June. Before we get started, just a couple little tips to remember. If you've been with us before, of course, these look familiar. If you have a question or I ask for a comment, if you will, please type that into your Q&A. June and I will be checking that throughout the webinar. Just please note that your microphones are muted. You're in listen-only mode, so if you try to speak, of course, we won't hear you, which is why the Q&A box. Please note again that today's presentation is being recorded and it will be archived and available on the IPDay website, always within 48 hours, usually a little quicker than that. But it's really a great thing if you want to listen to it again, or you have some folks who were not able to attend and would like to listen. So just those few tips to remember. So let's get started today, because I don't know about you, but I always wished my students could better understand and critique some of those images that we see in our life everywhere. And that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to talk a little bit about visual literacy and its purpose in today's world. We're also going to talk about some strategies that you can incorporate in your classroom immediately. And as always, of course, we're going to share some resources for the classroom, some great ideas and some great stuff out there. And of course, as always, don't forget that within your workbook, your guide, there are some guiding questions that you can follow along, or there again, after the workshop, take a quick look at. Visuals, they're everywhere. I mean, everywhere we look, we see something visual. And there's really a broad consensus in today's world among the scholars that our culture is becoming more visual than ever before. We live in a world where visual images are important, as information is increasingly presented to us as both a combination of words and images. In fact, our brains really are wired to make sense of and remember that visual input. We see diagrams, charts, drawings, pictures, and so many other ways that we can use to help our students understand complex information. But it's more than just saying we're in a visual world. The research is really strong, and it says that if we have a well-designed visual image, it can create a better learning experience for our students than if we just use verbal or textual information. In fact, some of the latest research studies really talk about that if we only hear a piece of information, by 3 days later, 10 to 20% is what we'll remember. However, the research is really strong that if we add a picture to that to the auditory, then what we remember is somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 83%. So keep that in the back of your mind as we're talking about visual literacy today, and keep that in the back of your mind as you're designing lessons, knowing that if we can give folks visual plus auditory, then we're going to increase their learning regardless of what we're teaching. You know, every day we're bombarded. We're bombarded with thousands of images, every type you can think of, from oh gosh, pictures and shop windows to the billboards to advertisements. In fact, I found a really neat bit of data, and it deals with YouTube. I don't know about you, but if I have to figure out how to do something new, I go to YouTube. And YouTube says that they get a day's worth of content uploaded every single minute. That's a lot of information. That's a lot of visuals. And that YouTube serves 1 billion videos in a single day. So visual literacy is alive and well. But what exactly is it? You know, sometimes we use the word graphic literacy. Then what's the difference between that and visual literacy? Visual literacy is just a little broader. It's a term that's been used for over 50 years, but it's really the ability to interpret, to recognize, to appreciate, to understand information that's presented in a visual pattern. So it's more than just graphs and charts and tables, more than just maps. It's all of the other visuals that we have around us. In fact, like I said, it can be maps, timelines. We see some of these on the GED test, and of course we see them in real world, all kinds of maps and timelines that we use daily and historically. Of course, charts and graphs. We see charts and graphs and tables on the GED test. We also see them on the TABE. So we see them a lot. And you know, you look at the newspaper or you look online and you see all kinds of graphs to read. We also have all kinds of posters, graphics, infographics. It seems like everywhere I look right now, I have infographics that come in to hit me. And then, of course, we also have films and videos, another part of visual literacy. And of course, we don't want to forget the fact that we have photos and drawings. We do see things like photos and editorial cartoons on the GED test, as well as, again, in our daily lives. So all of those things create what we call the world of visual literacy. So why do we need it, though? Well, I don't know about you, but sometimes GPS doesn't work, so I still have to read those maps. And I still have to read charts to figure out what to do. And sometimes I want to figure out what a graph says, so I make sure that it's okay. Our students of today are such experts in this field, but they use visual literacy for all those wonderful icons that we see on computers and cell phones and tablets, and of course all of the other little icons that they use in their text messages. Why else do we need visual literacy skills? This goes back to even when I was in school many years ago, the fact that much of the text may have a bold here or there, may have different fonts, and my teachers always said, look closely. That's visual literacy. We also have to decipher letters. Initially, when we're looking or when we're teaching students to read, they're just seeing those little icons, so to speak, but they understand the visual letter recognition that relies on visual literacy, but it's what leads them into being able to decode. Visual literacy is also seeing people, interacting with others. It's one of the things that June and I have talked about. We love our webinars, but it makes it more difficult to know what's happening in the field as you're listening, because I can't see your faces, your body language. So I'm not sure gosh, are you with me? Are you not with me? Who knows? But visually, when I can see you, again, it provides me with a lot of information, even though you're not saying to me, this is interesting, or gosh, I knew that. I just finished playing a piece of music, and those musical notes, again, an example of visual literacy. But the other thing that I think is really important is as we focus more and more this year specifically on ABE students and ESOL students, visual literacy can also encourage reluctant readers to read more. There are some great books out there based upon visuals, and students are more apt to read when they get engaged. Okay, since we now know that we need those skills, what in the world are we going to teach in our classrooms, since of course we're being asked to teach so many different things? And I'm saying to you, oh my goodness, I should be teaching visual literacy too. Well, we can teach visual literacy separate, but I prefer using it as an integrated approach as I'm teaching reading, as I'm teaching math, as I'm teaching those social skills. And if we look at Johns Hopkins at University press and you look at this graph, you can see all of the different kinds of things, from using the images, finding images, interpreting them, to even creating. When I look at so much of the curriculum in the K-12 system right now, it seems like there's always something that students have to create using visual media. So it really is a real life skill. Now, there's really more than just teaching visual literacy to students. Like we said a little bit earlier, I also know that if I incorporate visuals in my teaching of different concepts, my students are going to remember them better. So think about something that you teach and think about how visuals could help in the teaching of that concept. If I'm teaching something in science, some type of experimental design, my students may say, "What in the world are you talking about?" But if I can show them a short video of it, all of a sudden abstract ideas are a little more concrete. Or I'm talking about a box and whisker plot, and I have a student who says, "What in the world are you talking about?" If I can show them a video, a visual of what it looks like and how you create it, again, abstract becomes more concrete. It also helps students locate information, maybe even analyze reasons and form conclusions. Think of all those infographics that we see on a daily basis that I can see very quickly. Oh my goodness, this is the information I've got here, and wow, this helps me figure out what I need to conclude from the information. Visuals can also motivate learners, especially our students who are visual learners. They really need more than just text. It can help our students gain knowledge through repetition. I can see it in print, I can see it in a visual, maybe I even watch the type of visual such as a video. It just incorporates it and it reinforces it. It also can help our students recall prior learning, prior information, and reduces the learning effort just a little bit. And that's what we want too, so our students can really know what they're doing. It also provides, again, that concrete, which is so important to us. And again, back to the fact that these are visual learners and it helps them out a lot. So, why do we need to teach it? It's the shape of the 21st century, learning skills, etc. And we're not going to go away, I don't think, from a visual learning environment anytime soon. So let's get into it and figure out how we're going to put it as part of our classroom. But before we go there, I want to just, bring to mind the fact that it is reflected in the standards, and we know that we have to teach the curriculum standards. And so as we're looking at the Florida Curriculum Framework for ABE, we can see very quickly that the standards are there. Integrate and evaluate content presented in diverse media and formats, including visually and quantitatively. And assess how point of view or purpose shapes the content and style of a text, again, through different types of media. So it is important for our curriculum frameworks, for the TABE 11 and 12, for the GED test, and of course for all the other areas. As we look at visual literacy, there is a vocabulary. Of course, there is a vocabulary. There's a vocabulary for everything. But let's take a look at a few words for visual literacy that may be a little bit different than what we think of when we're teaching the reading process. Students aren't going to develop these skills without you assisting them, because the language for talking about images is so foreign to them. Have you ever heard, your students debate whether salients and vectors are part of a meme that somebody has shot? Or if you're looking at advertisements, all the different formats that are used, and maybe those formats show certain types of contact or certain types of power. Those are all words that are part of visual literacy. And as instructors, we need to be able to use those words so that students understand why they're looking at something visually. Now, there's all kinds of charts, and this is, a lot of information to look at. So please note that it's on page 9 of your workbook as well. But just very quickly, salience is the part of the picture that attracts our attention the most. We look at a picture and we go, wow, that's what I see right away. Vectors are when we look at a photo or an image of some type, how our eyes move. Where does your eye hit right away? When I'm looking at contact, I'm looking at the visual. Is that visual looking directly at me? Is it looking in a different direction, especially if there are people in it? And power is who has the power in the image. Okay, that's a lot of information. Let's kind of put it to use and see whether you can figure it out. Okay, in your Q&A box, type in the first thing that captured your eye on this particular photo. And just type in your answer in the Q&A box for me. And it looks like all of you are seeing exactly the first thing I saw. You definitely saw. I'm waiting for a couple more. We're getting lots of answers.
Bonnie, how about the answer of where it's saying not only the rose, but enjoying the fragrance of the rose?
And that's a different feel, because right now we're asking what captures your eye, and your eye does not capture fragrance. So salience is truly what captures your eye. And so at this point, what everyone is seeing is definitely that rose, and the fact that it's red, that red rose. And this photographer knew what he or she was doing, because that's the first thing you see. You don't see the eyes closed. You don't see that hint of a smile initially. Initially, your eye gets drawn to the red rose. And that's really all salience is. When we're teaching students with editorial cartoons, what's the first thing that their eye goes towards? When we're looking at infographics, what captures the eye? If we're looking at graphics of any type, what's the first thing that captures your eye? That's salience. Okay, let's take a look at another vocabulary word. Vectors, and this is how your eyes move. And I'm going to put up 3 pictures, and I want you to tell me how your eyes move as you look at this picture. Do they move left to right, right to left? Do they start in and work out? Do they go out and work in? Or does your eye get captured right in the center? So take a look at this one. Where does your eye move? Left, right, inward, outward, center? Type in, how does your eye move on this one? And I'm going to tell you, this one's not quite as clear as when we looked at salience, because what I'm seeing everybody do is basically one of 2 things. We're seeing some of you who are saying it goes center and then out. And then we see a number of you who are going, it either starts with that bird going right to left, and I think 1 or 2 of you said left to right. Here again, what is capturing your eye? Probably most of us are looking at it saying, okay, the first thing I see is that owl. And then it moves to what the owl is doing. And so I click into the mouse. So a little more right to left. Not necessarily a correct answer or incorrect. How about this one? What are you seeing here? Are you looking at right to left, left to right? Are you looking at inward and then moving outward? Or are you looking at center? And on this, most of you are going that you're starting in the center and then you're going out, because you're correct. Outside of this, it's kind of a blur. You don't see real clarity of what it is, but that picture in the middle goes there right at you. And then you see kind of the stuff that goes out. So that's the vector of this particular picture. One more. Left, right, right, left, inward, outward, or is your focus pretty much centered? And here, most of you are seeing pretty much a centered. Some of you center in on those owl's eyes, and then you're expanding your look a little bit. But initially you're really clicking in to that owl, that center first, and then coming out. And you can see how the artist has done the different pictures, how when you see all three of them together, you can see a little different vector for each of them. So that's vectors. Okay, let's take another look at some visual meta-language. And this is, where are the characters looking? Are these characters looking at each other? Are they looking at the viewer? Or are they looking somewhere else? Let's see. Okay, where is this picture looking? Where's this monster looking? Is he looking at another character, at each other? Is he looking at us? Definitely, and you guys have this one very quickly, and it's pretty easy to see that they are definitely looking at each other. The monster to the little girl and the little girl to the monster. That's the contact. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, where are these characters looking? Definitely at each other. I would say the little girl probably is looking more at his hands than his eyes, but definitely at each other. And one more. Where is this character looking? What is Marlon Brando's contact? Definitely. This particular one is looking at us, at the audience, maybe a little bit, at something we can't see or something off screen. I like that word, but definitely looking downward or looking down at what we would say the viewer or the camera. And that's contact. So we now have 3. Oh, you guys are great. You got this down. All right. Yeah, we have a few. We have no clue what he's looking at, except it's definitely not at anyone in the picture. Okay, one more. Power. Take a look. Whoops, sorry about that. Take a look at this picture. And tell me, where is the power in this image? Is it the setting? Is it the girl? Is it the statue of Lincoln? Is it the sunlight? Who or what has the power here? And most of you are saying that the power is coming from the statue, with a few of you seeing those sun rays coming first as the power. Either one works, but what you notice here is at the center of the picture is Lincoln. And yes, he has those sun rays coming in. Why would power be important? Again, when we're looking at visual literacy, we do need to have students go ahead and click in and understand where's the power. Great, okay. So those are the 4 words of meta-language that would be important for all of us to know. But let's take a quick look then at some strategies. There's really 2 basic strategies or approaches to teach visual literacy. One is we can teach by the more static pictures, drawings, charts, graphs, posters, cartoons. The other one is we can teach from more of the videos, films, PowerPoint, Prezi, those types of things, a little more interactive. So when we're looking in the classroom of how to really enhance our students' visual literacy skills, we just need to ask the right questions. If we ask the right questions, they will learn to, quote, read and discover the image that, or the story that's behind the image. So if we're looking at this photograph, one of the photographs that has caused some discussion in the world of whether it really happened, we can ask questions on the photograph, even if they know nothing about it, such as what gestures do you see? What expressions do you see? What do you notice about the clothing, the background? When do you think this occurred? What kind of conversation was going on? Those are the kinds of questions that can be really easy to ask in any level of a classroom. And as we're looking at all of these visuals, one of the things we do need to make sure is, just like we do a reading text, that visuals that we use, the answers aren't always found directly there. We want students to go beyond the information so that they can develop their answers. So questions that basically cast old knowledge in a new light, or questions that are going to generate multiple answers. Had we had a class and I had asked you about, where's the power in the photo, and tell me why you think that. That's the kind of questions we want students to be able to ask, those higher order analysis, synthesis, and evaluation questions, rather than just, I see a boy in a blue jacket. So what are some questions? Who created the image? Can they read who did it? Who's the audience? Am I the audience? Is the audience someone different? The purpose, to inform, to entertain, those kinds of things. What's the message? That one can be very difficult from our students, especially when it's like an editorial cartoon, etc. What creative techniques are used? What attracts your attention right away? Are there values, lifestyles, points of view within this particular visual? And even questions on why the image was arranged in that way. Think about all the graphs and charts we do when we're looking at graphs and a bar graph. Does it go vertical? Does it go horizontal? Why do we think that was done? And if we can take visual literacy like we do reading instruction and think about reading before, during, and after, then again, we've attached visual literacy into our reading classroom. So just like if you're having students read a text, preview the video, get a little bit of information, some questions you want students to think about, and even a purpose. Why are we watching this? during. Have them watch the clip, maybe with video more than once, and have them read with a different purpose. And when I say read again, it's watching, but it is the reading process. And then afterwards, basically having those questions that they answer based upon what they saw and based upon critical thinking skills. How about infographics? Is there a different process? Well, take a look at this infographic. And the questions don't have to be difficult, but it will make you think a moment. So, what's the focus of this infographic? And if you'll just do a quick type into your Q&A box, what's the focus? And we have a lot of focus, and it all comes down to, you know, that exercise and health, running, etc., that whole bit of exercise and health. And here again, as we're looking at that, a couple comments that many of you made. Do we offer hints as we experienced here when we asked those? It depends upon your level of learner and what you're trying to get from it. With this one, I want students to take a quick look and see and give me some information so I know as the teacher where I need to head with this. Okay, that's the focus. What's the author's purpose? Well, that would be fairly easy to inform, but let me ask you all. The author's purpose is to inform. So how does the author demonstrate this information or knowledge of the subject? What does the author provide? Exactly right. We've got a number of you, facts and statistics, the visuals and the statistics. So this author is doing stats for us. How do the visual elements support understanding or analysis? Okay, when I look at this infographic, how do the visual elements help me understand or analyze what the stats are saying? What do you see? Great information coming in from all of you. Yes, what I see are those icons, which then lead me to certain body parts and which attach to the stats. So students should be able to see that right away if we're teaching, again, visual literacy. Okay, if you could improve it, what would you do differently? One thing that you think would improve this graphic, this infographic. Some great ideas again. Larger font, maybe different genders, different colors for the different body parts. A couple of you have said different colors, like maybe the color red, a little brighter colors, all great. And then maybe simplify it a little more. And then a couple of you said, for me, enhance the color of the letters. More specifics, some great ideas. And our students need to think critically when they're doing different types of graphics. So all of you are doing a wonderful job of just clicking into that. Okay, that's infographics. How about graphs, charts, tables? We do a lot of that because we've been teaching graphs and charts and tables for math for a long, long time. So hopefully all of us are doing some of those kinds of questions of asking students about patterns, what the graph tells them, who could use the data, how students could use it, why the data is shown a certain way. Why did the author create a line graph or a box and whisker graph? All of those kinds of things that our students need to do. Okay, time out for a little bit of fun before we head on. Puns are based on effective visual literacy. So let's have a little bit of fun and see if you can determine the pun for each of the visuals. What is this? Oh, brilliant. Somebody got it right away. It's a Palm Pilot. I'm either going to say you're brilliant or you're back in the day. But yes, I do remember the Palm Pilot. What's this? You got it. King of Pop. Everybody can go, oh, how about this one? This one was too easy. I've got a lot of Dr. Pepper out there. Okay, let's take it into science. Why is this funny? Yes, it is a chemistry pun because that lovely little PB is metal. And so, yes, they don't do heavy metal. Okay, one more. Let's do math. What's the humor? If you got the fact that a circle doesn't have any points where a triangle does, you got it. Great, okay. Time out for a little pun, right? Okay, where can you locate resources? I'm going to tell you that all the resources we're going to see in just a moment are in your workbook guide, so don't worry about saying, oh, I need to get the URL for those. You will have them all. You know, there's so many great resources out there. The important thing is as we're looking at for visuals that we need to make sure the visuals we use are relatable and engaging, meaningful, and once in a while that we have a little bit of fun with them as well. So I want to just take you out in just a moment and see some images. But there again, all of them are in the workbook pages 28, 29. But before we go out into that part of the internet, let me just reinforce the fact that there are a lot of visuals, images out there that we can use for free. And we know that the human brain processes images about 60,000 times faster than text. So we know that good photos really can grab attention and get our message across regardless of what we're teaching. But most of us don't have all the pictures in the world either. So Google Images is a real common one that many of us have used, but realize that there's more than Google Images out there. There are all kinds of sites that we can get free visuals from, everything from StockVault to Flickr to Creative Commons to Pexels to PicJumbo and Splash. If you've never gone out to see some of these, take a look at them. Because there really are so many different images, and if they won't copy well, just go ahead. Don't forget that you have a snipping tool on your computer that also works really, really well. Okay, having said that, give me a moment. I'm going to take us out to the web and just take a look at a couple of sites. You should all see a periodic table of visualization methods, and this is a great online site. What it does is if you hover over the different things, it shows you the different visuals. And so I want to see what a circle diagram looks like. There's one. I want to see what a histogram looks like. Here's one. Well, maybe I have no clue what a PERT chart is. Again, I hover over and I can see a PERT chart. I like this one because here again, it just as a teacher gives me that basic overview of what something looks like. Another great website for you to look at is, I said you have a sheet on different worksheets that come from the National Archives. And what they do is they give us actual worksheets we can download for different types of visuals. So everything from a photo analysis worksheet, cartoons, motion pictures. I've pulled up the one to analyze a map. There's poster analysis forms as well, all free. And so all you have to do is download them and off you go. Now, if visual literacy is something a little bit newer to you and you want to have a few more ideas, the Department of History and Visual Resources here, which comes out of the University of Maryland, is a great site because there's all kinds of activity plans for you, banks of questions, learning objectives. So visual literacy, you want to actually get into just teaching the process. Here again is a great website with all kinds of free things for your usage. Now, we've talked a lot about graphs and charts and the fact that we've used those for math for a long time, but sometimes it's a little bit hard to really find a good graph or chart. And I know that we can use Excel and we can use Word, but you know, if I want to go a little more simplistic because I don't want to go to the hassle of doing that, this particular one from the National Center for Education Statistics is a site where you can actually create a graph. It's a great site for students to use too, to create a graph. You can see you can create bar graphs, line graphs, etc. I guarantee this particular one is extremely simple to use. I've used it a lot when I've created activities and I go, wow, much easier for me to use than when I get into, you know, all the different types of graphics from the Microsoft products. So just another resource. So as you were looking through some of those, I'm hoping that what you saw was at least one or two that you said, I'd like to go back and see those. If you didn't see anything there, National Archives, or from the periodic table of visualization methods, there's a couple more that I didn't go out to today. Some of our students love creating comic strips. Toondoo is a free site that they can create comic strips with. Don't forget Wordle, again, a free site for all of us. Here's the one from the Visual Literacy Toolbox that we went out to. There's also a site from the New York Times that gives you some photographs that you can teach visual thinking skills. And then again, here's back to that graph that creating from the National Center for Education Statistics. Okay, did I just encourage violating intellectual property rights? All of these websites, no. And when you look at some of the other things, you'll see that they either have permission to use, or there again, we are using it for an educational purpose. So you do need to check, you're right, on some of the sites to make sure that you do not violate intellectual property rights. You can even in your classroom sometimes have fun with fake visuals, and this is kind of where we're going to finish up a little bit because we know fake pictures are everywhere, and sometimes our students will come in with misconceptions that come right off the internet or the TV. Think of what a fun lesson you could do if you were doing a lesson on whether pictures were real or not, such as, you know, the picture on the left really looks fantastic, but it's a fake picture because they just photoshopped clouds in. But how many of us would say, oh my goodness, how did that picture? Or as we're looking and having students become really better readers of visuals, this particular site was a fake site. There was never such a medication. There was never this type of disease. It was an amazing fraud that came out. And yet, if you didn't read well enough, you'd think that you found the latest, greatest. World's largest tortoise found in the Amazon River, believe it or not. Again, these are the kinds of things our students see in visuals, and we see in visuals all the time. And, you know, it's just not about images, especially our Generation Z. They tend to be adept at, you know, most things digital. If you've been with me before, you've probably seen "Don't believe everything you read on the internet just because there's a picture with a quote next to it," good old Abraham Lincoln. But there again, visuals aren't what they seem. So the recent attention, you know, on fake news, et cetera, has really inspired a slew of educational resources, from fake news finders to full courses on news literacy. So just another way that we can click through. Okay, so visual literacy, visual literacy, visual literacy. There's a whole lot of resources out there for you to use. Let's just take a very quick look, because there is, a couple of you have noted, a workbook that does go along with this particular webinar, and I just want to highlight a couple things so you'll know what's in there. Guiding questions, of course, if you would like to present this webinar to your district, your college, etc., and you'd like some questions for folks to follow along with. A couple articles coming from different people about teaching visual literacy in the classroom. Again, some great information here. This particular one comes from Literacy Ideas. And I hope I'm not making anybody dizzy going through this. The chart that was in the PowerPoint in a little more readable format. Just a few strategies and activities, some ideas for your classroom. And you'll notice the analysis worksheets there. And then a couple things that you may find interesting. These particular lesson plans, and there'll be a resource activity, are on Florida IPDay website. But just to highlight, there's one out there on interpreting photographs, which is already up, has been up for a while on the Florida Literacy website. But here it is in its completeness. And then this upcoming year, there will be tied to the reading matrices, different types of activities that will be attached to each of the standards. And so here's one that will, it's not up yet, but will be, and it's, again, reading a map, using illustrations and details tied to an ABE standard 7.1. So you have those in here as well. And then last but not least, the websites that we used throughout this webinar, so that you have everything right there on basically a page and one line. One last thing, and that is the aspect that as we start looking at the fall, There are going to be workshops again, and the workshops for the fall are Unlocking the Learning to Build Resilient Learners. Those particular workshops are up right now, so you can actually register. And I'd strongly suggest registering sooner than later, as always. And so that is basically what's up there. Now, before you leave us today, I'm checking just any other questions that anybody has. And it looks like I think we've pretty much covered the questions. Before you leave me today, though, we would like you to take just a very short questionnaire, as always. So if you can, please give us your quick feedback. And just as an update, next week's webinar will be on the TABE 11 and 12 updates and best practices. It's going to be given by Mike Johnson, who does work for DRC, the resident expert there, of course, on the TABE. If you've ever met Mike, he'll be able to answer definitely all of your questions. Okay, I'd like to thank everybody for being with June and me today. It has been indeed a pleasure. We hope that you have found at least one thing that piqued your interest on visual literacy. And if you have any questions, etc., in the future, just please let us know. And there again, thank you so very, very much.